On today's show, we're going to hear from the Nashville Predators' young talent as they self-evaluate their performances, discuss the effect so much losing had on them this season, and talk about what the coaching staff may need to do with these future pieces going forward.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everybody. We made it through another week. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this Friday episode the way we kick off all of our episodes, and that is with a hearty shout out to our Locked On Predators insiders and to our everydayers who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio and Friends. You know I have a partner in crime.
You do. I am Emma Lingan, and I am the Nashville Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News. And I would like to echo what you said, and we have made it through another week, but add without hearing when Barry Trotz will speak.
You all, the phone refreshing I have done to check my email, no joke. It's become a whole thing.
Of
Nothing.
note.
Of note.
Of note.
The crickets are chirping. That is of note. Crickets are chirping. We do have some things to talk about while we continue to wait for Barry Trotz. The Nashville Predators entered this season with these very high expectations. Now, let's be honest, those were largely due to veteran names coming into the room. But friends, it may be the young players in the franchise who kind of bore the brunt of all of those unmet expectations. Today, we're going to hear some season-ending thoughts from players like Zach L'Heureux, Fedor Svechkov, and of course, Luke Evangelista. And we're going to talk about what this season could and maybe should mean for these young pieces going forward. But before we dive into that, do want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So, Emma, we've been kind of going through the week with tons of media availability that happened with the Predators during locker room cleanout. And we're just kind of breaking down what we heard from different people. And we've heard from the veterans, but I think it's really important that we got a chance to talk to some of these younger pieces, because let's face it, the Predators' record, not really of note in the big scheme of things, but Nashville did debut seven players made their NHL debut for this franchise. Zach L'Heureux, Fedor Svechkov, Ryan Ufko, Matthew Wood, Ozzy Weisblatt, good old Ozzy Weisblatt, Adam Wilsby, who we didn't see for as long as we would have loved to. And of course, we got a quick peek at Joakim Kimmel as well. So we are going to talk about what we saw from all seven of those over the course of the offseason. So if you were interested in our thoughts on any of those debuts, don't worry. We're going to cover all of that in the offseason as well. But want to focus in on a couple of them that were here for longer stretches, and want to kick it off with Zachary L'Heureux, who just, I think it's important to note, won the Flo-Mo vote of the season for his hairstyle. Beat out another person we're talking about today, Luke Evangelista. I think it's going to be a bone of contention in the offseason. L'Heureux debuted October 22nd, friends, against the Boston Bruins, and got here and stayed here, which I think is definitely of note when it comes to Zachary L'Heureux. I don't know, Emma, that we maybe would have seen him 5 games into the season, but those first 5 games were not good for Nashville. And, I wonder if just the boost of a debut and what Zach showed them in training camp maybe was just kind of the hey, let's try this for Zach L'Heureux.
Yeah, and I think even after he was called up, I don't think the intention was ever necessarily for him to stay there. I think it was sort of assumed that he would end up back in Milwaukee, not for any bad reason. It's just kind of like you said, like, all right, let's see what we got. And he ended up, earning his keep in Nashville. And I think that he did a respectable job. He dealt with the same challenges that a lot of this team did this year with different line mates and playing different roles up and down the lineup. And it's, we saw him on the second line, we saw him on the fourth line. And I think that's on one hand, it's good to see the versatility in a young player like that.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, I think it's still, it could be kind of damaging to a young player's confidence because he is, he was primarily a goal, maybe not primarily, but he was a goal scorer in the AHL, and we saw a little bit of that from him at the NHL level, but he really kind of went cold there for a while when he was on the fourth line and, supposed to be part of that heavy hitting checking line, which is something else that he can do, but you want to put him in a position where he can do both. So, even talking to him, you could tell he was a little frustrated that he hadn't been finding the back of the net as much, but then again, who was? So,
Who among them? Who among them, Emma?
yeah, Zach, oh, it's not just you, buddy,
It's
but
not you.
yeah, I overall though, like I think that he looked NHL ready, and so it, didn't make sense to send him back down.
Yeah, I love what you're talking about when it comes to Zach LaRue because in his rookie season, you all, this kid was placed into very different roles and kind of thrown in and said, "See what happens." So he talked about that. He talked about playing up and down the lineup and what that experience was like for him. This is what he had to say about that.
I feel like I showed that I can play on all the lines. Like I feel like I had an impact no matter who I played with, and gelled well with all the guys. But at the same time, yeah, I feel like a little bit maybe I wasn't. When I was playing up in the lineup, I was losing my game. I feel like that's just part of learning, part of growing, being a young player in this league. It's hard. It's really, really hard, and I think that's having the last few days for me to reflect on a little bit. I know that there's little areas of my game that I can be better at, and that I know I can work towards. And I think everything's positive. It's not something I can't accomplish. So I know I've got a big summer ahead of me here. So yeah, just focused on getting faster, quicker, stronger, growing, so that when I show up to training camp next year, it's turn the page, start over, and make the team out of camp. That's my number one goal, and yeah, hopefully just have a better year. You're not always going to have it every night. It's how can you have an impact when you don't have it.
Emma, you touched on something that was such a big concern for me when Zach LaRue came up here, and that was moving up and down the lineup because, of course, he started out, he played with Michael McCarron, played a lot of time with McCarron and Cole Smith, and kind of that bottom grinder physicality, like you're not going to get the puck, we're going to get the puck kind of line. And I love that for Zach LaRue because even though he is a little bit more fun sized than, say, a Michael McCarron, Zach LaRue plays a very big game, a very big physical game. My concern was, as the season progressed, dear heavens, are we Phil Tomasinoing him? Are we sticking him on the fourth line when, like you said, this is a player who previously, and I know the NHL is not the same as the AHL, it's not the same as juniors, but this is a goal scorer. Zach LaRue is a goal scorer. And I love that he did get a chance to play up. He played some time with Steven Stamkos. He played some time with Philip Forsberg on that second line. These are the players that you need to give that opportunity to. And I don't know that he would have gotten it, except they were dropping like flies. When you look back and think back on this season for Zach LaRue, what stood out to you when it came to moving him up and down the lineup? Is there a place where you're like, this is the better fit for him going forward? Or what else does he need to show, hey, I'm a goal scorer. There's more offense to my game?
I don't know that anything stuck out to me as far as this is a better fit for him, but I think that watching him throughout the season, I couldn't help but keep thinking of Kiefer Sherwood, who
Yes.
was also a goal scorer in the AHL and at every level that he had played in before he got to the NHL. And he didn't, he just wasn't finding the back of the net at the NHL level, at least not at the same rate that he was. And that happens to a lot of players. And what kind of happens to them is they just sort of fizzle out and they disappear and they don't, it's like, well, if I can't score goals, then like, I'm lost. What am I doing? And that's normal. Like, I feel like that's understandable. That's human nature. But what Kiefer Sherwood did, and what I feel like to a similar degree Zach LaRue is doing, is modifying their game and sort of leaning into, not changing their game, but leaning into other parts of their game. And, Zach LaRue is a very versatile player in that regard because, for example, I think of like a Joachim Kimmel, for example, very skilled, really powerful shot. I don't know that he would be able to adjust or lean in more to the physical part of the game and start throwing his body around and checking people the same way that Zach LaRue could. And that's not a knock on Kimmel. It's just not his role. That's not part of his game. And that's not part of what makes him a good player. So I think if you have that, like Zach LaRue has the hits, he has that checking and that puck hunting mentality. I think that his ability to lean into that makes him a good bottom six guy. Again, similar to what we saw with Kiefer Sherwood, where he's not only just filling a hole on the bottom six, but he was actually being very effective there. That being said, I don't want Zach LaRue to immediately get pigeonholed into that role.
Biggest fear for him. That's my biggest fear for him.
So I think that, okay, it's good to know that he can do that. That's great. But let's try and, let him explore the other sides of his game a little bit.
I agree with that. That's my biggest fear going forward when it comes to Zachary LaRue. There's more to his game than the fourth line role maybe highlights. And can the Nashville Predators develop that and give him an opportunity to showcase that? Coming up, Zach LaRue shared what the hardest part of this NHL season was, and it was very similar to what Fedor Svechkov had to say. We're going to talk about the challenges of that first season coming up. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included. And friends, you are ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It is gaming made simple, and it is all on your Fire TV. And again, it isn't just about the convenience of the gaming. With 4K streaming, you can watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. So we know, Emma, just because we have been around and talked to young players, a huge leap between life in the AHL and life in the NHL. And that was something that Zachary LaRue talked about. That's something that Fedor Svechkov talked about as well, because this was, of course, the season he debuted in the NHL. A lot goes into making that adjustment from the NHL to the AHL, and it takes time. Fedor Svechkov, I think for me, Emma, was one of the bright spots in a season with, friends, let's just be honest, very, very few bright spots. Like Fedor Svechkov played 52 games, 8 goals, 17 points. And I think we really started to see some things from Fedor Svechkov as he got more and more comfortable in the NHL. He did talk about what he learned, and he talked about what the one hardest part of being in the NHL and this season was. This is what he had to say, and then we're going to talk about it.
I mean, you're getting through different parts of like being an NHL player, and it's like first about confidence that you can get in and can make plays and all the stuff. And next, I think you get through the schedule, because I've never played that much games for like this time. You know, we had like 7 games for 10 days or something like that. So you gotta be focused on your recovery and different details of the ice. And I understand that it's a tough league, and sometimes something not going like your way, and you gotta get through it and just work. Yeah, so it was different part, but now I feel like better to get ready for next season than if I'm not could play these games. You know.
What was the hardest part of the season?
I mean, losses. It sucks to lose almost half of the games where you're playing, and I've never been in that position, and it sucks. Yeah, so it was the most difficult part of the season, I think.
Okay, first of all, totes adorbs Fedor Svechkov, and I love his honesty. He's like, the losses. It sucks to lose. And this is what is so hard for me when I look at these younger players, especially LaRue, Svechkov, these guys that made their NHL debuts, because they are watching the veterans to learn how to do this successfully. If there was not success, Emma, everybody's looking around for some success. There was none to be found this season. I worry about that, and he mentioned confidence. And I worry about how is the complete and utter lack of success this season going to affect the confidence of somebody like Fedor Svechkov. These are the things that keep me up at night, Emma.
Yeah, I mean, it is tough, and I love that honesty we get from him. Like after, I forget which game it was now, which not that there were that many to choose from. A game that they won when we asked
many.
When we asked, what impressed him the most. He said, "Well, if we score more than 2 goals, I'm impressed."
He's so delightful, you all.
Yeah, but you do like. On one hand, it's kind of like, well, this will be good for them, these younger players later in their careers. They'll know how to deal with adversity and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, yes. Like, I do think it could be detrimental for them to be brought up where they only know winning and they only know
True.
so then they don't know, like, if something goes wrong, it's like all hell breaks loose. But this is too much losing. And I think we could all agree on that.
Like, you don't see the end of the lesson. Like, the lesson is just hanging this offseason. Like, if you work hard and you dig deep and you do the mental work, then what? You're in the offseason and you didn't even sniff the playoffs. And you've got to get to the point where Svech and LaRue go, oh, if you do the right thing, success will come. And the Nashville Predators, I mean, even little pockets of success. This is not a team that had a lot of pockets of success. Now, I think how they finished the season, not necessarily record-wise, but as far as how they played down the stretch, maybe you can get some takeaways from that. But I'm like, this coaching staff needs to be really careful with the young players because they don't have the end of the lesson yet. And they have to believe, they have to find a way to convince these players, no, really, we mean it. If you do the right thing, success will come. And I think confidence is huge for these guys. Like, across the board, the thing that surprised me from media availability is how many of these players talked about the mental aspect. Like, yes, lots of injuries and yada, yada this season and all of that. But the mental aspect of this season, I think it was brutal. I mean, it was brutal on the veterans, but these poor young guys, like, it's not good. Here is the silver lining for me for Fedor Svechkov. Svech is headed back to Milwaukee, and he will be playing in the AHL postseason. And let me just remind everybody, if you love hockey, And if you are somebody who's like, the Nashville Predators need to rebuild, then you better get yourself a subscription to Flow Hockey, and you better be watching all of these playoff games for the Milwaukee Admirals, because first of all, it's a very good Milwaukee Admirals team that could make a deep run. But second of all, this is going to be really valuable for players like Svechkov, for a Mark Del Gaizo, for a Joachim Kimmel, for an Ozzy Weisblatt, who's been super fun to watch lately. Like, but man, I worry about the young Sprouts, Emma. This was a tough season for them.
It was, but it's good for those guys like you mentioned, Svechkov, Weisblatt, Kimmel, you've got who else? Del Gaizo, Stastny, all of those guys, not just this year, but last year too. Like, they're getting a taste of winning and going on a championship run. They're not doing it here, but they are doing it in Milwaukee. So it's still, I think, good for them to get back into it, just because, I mean, even you and I were talking about, like, just the negativity around the Predators. It's just toxic. And I don't mean coming from the players themselves. I mean, they were
Just
all
the experience has
just
been.
the aura, the environment.
We need
It's just,
sage. We need sage, you
yes.
all.
Oh, we need to go sage that locker room. But yes, I think that it'll be good for them to get out of that negativity for a little bit, get into a situation where it's like, hey, we're playing for something together, like playing for something more than just playing time,
Yeah.
And I think that this will be good for them.
What do you think Fedor Svechkov has to show to make the roster out of camp, or do you think off-season moves may weigh in more heavily than anything he shows if the Preds go out and get themselves a center somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, the off season is definitely going to be a big part of that, because I think, here's the thing, Fedor Svechkov, not a 1C. Not saying
No.
that he's not good, and he's not talented. I think his ceiling is a really good 2C.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. Like,
Yeah.
if he can be that. But the problem is they don't have the 1C. Right now it's Ryan O'Reilly. Quite frankly, he's a better 2C as well. So I think when it comes to Svechkov, we even saw more throughout the season, because I will say it was not all linear for him. It wasn't all on
Sure
the up and
not.
up. I mean, obviously he got sent back down to Milwaukee, came back up. And even he acknowledged it. He's like, yeah, it was harder than I thought. Like, it was more of an adjustment. And you could see, he would make some really good plays. You would see flashes of that potential, but then you would also see some very common rookie mistakes, like just things that you could tell that you're like, oh yeah, he's new here. And so I think it'll be important for him to, because towards the end of the season, we started seeing, like, I thought, steady improvement in his game. And he actually was making fewer of those mistakes. He looked more confident. I think you just need to see more of a, just kind of keep building on that trajectory. But I also still think that the offseason moves are going to have a lot to do with it.
Yeah, it's something to definitely keep our eye on. Another player to keep your eye on, friends, Luke Evangelista. He's a little bit more seasoned amongst the younger players, and he had an opportunity to play some top line minutes. He talked about what that experience was like. We're going to share that with you coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by our great friends at Game Time. We know it. The Stanley Cup playoffs are here. And if you have never been to a live NHL playoff game, it is really unlike any other experience. There's intensity, the speed, the energy in the building. It is all next level in the playoffs. Thanks to Game Time, getting in the door of those playoffs is easier and it's more affordable than ever. Game Time is the fastest way to grab playoff tickets, even for those must-see matchups. Prices actually drop as puck drop gets closer. And with their last minute deals, you can save up to 60%. Game Time's all-in pricing shows you the total cost up front. There's no surprise fees at checkout. The app even shows you a panoramic seat view so you know exactly what you're getting before you buy. And with Game Time ticket coverage, you know you're protected, whether it is cancellation protection, job loss insurance, or their 24-hour return guarantee. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Before we turn the page to Luke Evangelista, I just want to share one of my favorite conversations this season was with Fedor Svechkov, and we're talking about the challenges in the NHL. And I said to him, "Is it very stressful?" And I love his answer. He said, "Not stressful at all. This is the game I have loved since I was 3. I love to play hockey." And I thought, oh, let this season of what the hell just happened not take that joy, Fedor Svechkov. Protect that joy, friend. Oh, Luke Evangelista, another young player, but friends, we all know this is not Luke's first rodeo here. It was, however, maybe his first chance to play some consistent minutes at an elevated role, and that's a role that we really want to see what he can grow into. This is what he had to say about playing those top minutes.
Just kind of got a really good opportunity, and that's, as a player, that's all you can ask for. I got an opportunity to play some, top 6 minutes with great linies. I was playing with, Factor, and whether it was Phil or Bunce, it felt like you said, kind of, that's the version of myself that, I think I expect, and I think the staff expects. That was more like how I like to play and produce, and I got a great opportunity, and kind of did something that I can build some momentum off of and go into the summer with a little bit of confidence. So it's a good end to like that.
What did you see from Luke Evangelista when he got those opportunities finally to play top 6 minutes with Ryan O'Reilly, with Phil, with Bunce? I don't know how I feel about that nickname, Michael Bunting. What did you see from him, Emma? Like potential there?
Yeah, I did. I think, he is a really, really good playmaker and puck distributor. And I think we saw, you get him with really skilled scorers, finishers like a Michael Bunting or a Philip Forsberg or Ryan O'Reilly. Like, I think that just elevates that part of his game. And, no disrespect to guys like Tommy Novak and Mark Jankowski, may they rest in peace. I think putting Luke Evangelista with those guys was never really going to showcase his ability as a distributor, a puck distributor, and a playmaker, just because he wasn't on a line with talented scorers. Tommy Novak, you would see flashes of it every once in a while, but it wasn't consistent. Yeah. And then, of course, Mark Jankowski went to Carolina and turned into Alex Ovechkin, but
Popped off.
Neither here nor there. I think that we did see a lot of potential. He was getting on the score sheet a lot more. He was building his confidence. He looked like he belonged there. What I worry, or maybe not worry yet, that's too strong of a word, but what is of note is that we saw, not necessarily in a top 6 role, but we saw something similar from him last year down the stretch and into the playoffs. No one for the Predators looked good in the playoffs. Luke Evangelista looked pretty good. Like, you could see it. It was like, ooh, it's right there. Like, it is right there. And you could just see him growing in his confidence. And that was kind of one of the moral victories you took away from the playoff loss to Vancouver, which was like, okay, that didn't go well, but here's what we have to look forward to.
Yeah.
And then, again, it's hard though, because again, who among them hasn't had their share of struggles this season? So, he is back. He's, kind of buried in the bottom six for a while. He gets injured. He's playing with all these different line mates, and we kind of saw a little bit of a regression.
Mhm.
And I think that is part of that is normal. Growth usually isn't in a straight line. I mean, you see it all the time. Guys maybe taking a step back, just or taking a step back before they take 2 steps forward. It happens. So I'm not ready to write him off yet and be like, well, we saw this last year and it didn't work out. So I think that I hope that this year was enough of a it was convincing enough for the coaching staff and the leadership in the front office to be like, okay, see what happens when you put talented young players with skilled veterans? Good things happen.
Good things happen. I love what you're saying too about where he is placed matters, because this is what I took away from Luke Evangelista. In his last 15 games of the season, he had 13 points. 4 of those were goals. Now, is he finding the back of the net as much as you want him to? No. But what those stats tell me is that Luke Evangelista can play this game at a Philip Forsberg, Michael Bunting, Ryan O'Reilly level. And quite frankly, I do not care whether it is Forsberg, O'Reilly, Bunting, or Evangelista that scores a goal. Just score the damn goals. And Luke Evangelista had so many assists because he can think the game at that level. And you've got to find out if a player has that before you say, no, that's not going to work. And no disrespect to any of his former line mates, but you're not going to know when he is paired on a line with a Michael McCarron or a Mark Jankowski or a Tommy Novak. You're not going to know if he can play at Philip Forsberg's level, if he can think the game there, until you give him a chance. And so I love what he did with that. So want to see him come back and pick up where he left off. That's what we didn't see at the beginning of the season. Like, pick up where you left off. He has it. I'm telling you, Luke Evangelista has it. I'm with you. Hey, everybody in charge of the decisions. Let's give him a shot. Let's give him a chance. Before we wrap up the show, Emma, I did want to point out interesting news for those of you who are like, man, I wish I could watch a Nashville Predator player play some more hockey. Don't fret. Yesterday, Team USA named their roster for the Men's Worlds. Michael McCarron, I still can't call him by the nickname, Michael McCarron and Brady Shea are on Team USA. And of course, we know that UC Saros is going to be in net for Team Finland. Off the top of my head, I don't know about anybody else yet, Emma, but we'll see as rosters are announced.
Yeah, a lot of the countries are kind of doing it differently. Like they're doing the thing where they just reveal like the first 5 players or something, and then they reveal the whole roster later, kind of like what they did for 4 Nations. I don't really know, but I think a lot of it
Nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that right now.
Well, a lot of it has to do with, like which guys are still in the
Right.
playoffs and might not be in the playoffs by that time. And,
Yeah.
there's a lot going into it. Of course, we saw Roman Josi play for Switzerland last year. He will
Yeah.
not be this year for obvious reasons with his health. But
I also don't want to see his face when he gets a silver medal again this year, because he looked like somebody kicked his puppy. Nobody likes the sad Roman Josi. That was pitiful.
No,
Hate
but you got Michael McCarron, Brady Shea, new soon to be boy dad Michael McCarron. He and his wife are pregnant with their second. So that'll be exciting.
I love that.
And yeah, Brady Shea too. Like I know we'll talk about him some more. I know I was high on him when he first got here, and I am not going to pretend that the early part of his season was good, because it wasn't. But I still had faith in him, and I think we started to see again towards the end of the year. It's like, aha, there it is. There it is. It just took a minute. So anyone who has already written off Brady Shea, I implore you, please do not. Not yet.
Not yet. Tune into, Team USA at Worlds. And I think, again, this is going to do nothing but benefit these guys to play some summer hockey. And of course, they always they get so excited about representing their home countries, which I think is really cool because this sport is so freaking international. I love when they get an opportunity to play for their home country. Emma, we just wrapped up another week of the Locked On Predators podcast. This time we didn't have to recap a loss. So, friends, that's the upside of the postseason with Locked On Predators. And
we take the wins where we can get them, everybody.
And we couldn't get them on the ice all season. So here we are. But lots of off-season content. So make sure you're tuning in Monday through Friday. Next week, we are going to talk about players like Philip Forsberg. We are going to be talking about players like Brady Shea. Friends, we wonder if maybe we'll be talking about Barry Trotz's press conference. Still waiting. Still waiting. Of note.
Of note. I'm like, did he forget about us? Like, we're just kind of sitting here like.
Yeah. Is he out and maybe he's out scouting for the draft, but just a note to say, hey, sorry, Barry's out looking at Michael Misa. He'll return next week. We got nothing. But of note, we're waiting. And when it happens, you know that we will bring you all of the news from Barry Trotz's press conference as well. Could be big news. Could be little news. We'll discuss all of that next week. Emma, before we log off for this week, let everyone know where they can find you and your work.
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingan, and you can find my work at the Hockey News. Once again, we are doing the Hockey News Playoff Frenzy live show every night during playoffs. You can tune in and find me there if you want to hear me yapping about teams other than the Predators. I will be there. So
it's got to be so fun to talk about the playoffs, Emma.
I'm
living vicariously through you.
To talk about teams that win games. It's really
can't even imagine. Yeah, so I'll be tuning in as well. So join me as we watch Emma living her best life talking about playoff hockey. Meanwhile, if you're just looking for like sad takes on hockey that's not happening, or friends, join me for Milwaukee Admirals coverage because I'm going to be all over that like flies on stink. You can follow me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. That is going to do it for this week's episodes of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks again so much for making us your first listen of the day. We hope you guys have a fabulous weekend. We'll be back on Monday. We'll see you then.